2 buffs, 2 nerfs. I wish there were more buffs. I wish they were buffing underperforming cards, but I largely agree with the buffs, and the nerfs are okay, I suppose. We'll see how it plays out. We're going to talk about the changes and read the developer notes. We're also going to go over the top meta decks based off of my video from earlier this week, and we're going to talk about how this is going to affect the meta and specific decks and what is going to be the winners and losers. Before we get into all that, I want to say that probably the big winner of the week is going to be Enchantress, now being a 4/6, and I think that Sarah Control will see a resurgence. This is one of my favorite decks, and I'm going to love having the ability to play Shang-Chi and Enchantress on the last turn. I also think that people are going to be playing Cosmo a lot more, that being said. So let's read the developer notes. Then we're going to go over all of the top meta decks and see if that is going to affect this and make some predictions of what's going to happen next week. And then we, of course, will update our tier list as we have more data. April 27th, OTA balance changes. This is going to happen every Thursday. Shanna is going to be now a 4/4. This is a card that I do not have. It is a underwhelming card. I will play and get this card if she becomes a performer. Add a random 1 cost card to each location. Shanna has fallen a bit flat since release. Even during the height of Zabu's might, she was a low performing 4 cost card, and we like to give her a better chance to shine. This buff is simple, but highlights Shanna wasn't being appropriately compensated for needing 4 available slots to hit her ceiling. In general, cards and decks that fill many slots early are safer to make strong, since there are plenty of game left to react or retreat, and their ability to gain cubes is impeded. Especially true in Shanna's case, where the randomness and existence of cards like Killmonger makes her a bit riskier. Hopefully this additional power is enough. So, in my opinion, these are the kind of changes that I would like to see the most. Like they buffed Sentry, you know, from a 4/8 to a 4/10. And then the Void, whatever, is now -10. Perfect example of a change that allowed viability of a card that largely was not being played. And I hope Shanna is the same way, and I'm looking forward to picking her up if she becomes viable in any kind of deck. We will see. Lizard. Now, this is the controversial one. I didn't see Lizard as being a big deal. I also can see people now playing Lizard with Enchantress to kind of offset. Lizard might not be a plug and play card anymore. I largely feel that Jeff is more of that slot, or a card like Scorpion or Armor. And Lizard is just not going to see as much play unless it's in a deck that runs Enchantress or Zero. Ongoing, -3 power. If your opponent has 4 cards here, now it'll be -4. So it's basically going to be a 2/1 instead of a 2/2 in a full lane. When one card becomes clear outlier on play rate because it's playable in a huge number of decks, it's something we flag and keep an eye on. Doesn't mean we always take action, which I just want to pause there for a minute. Like Shang-Chi is probably one of those cards that gets seen a lot of play. I think it's the most played card, which surprised me that they didn't do anything to Shang-Chi, but then they, for some reason, chose to target Lizard, which is kind of strange. It's important for us to keep in mind that series structure can serve to make cards appear overplayed when they're actually just widely available. However, when we have a clear top card for that cost and can slice a little bit of strength away from it without necessarily dethroning it, it's largely a solid change for us to make. So that's what's happening here with arguably the softest nerf we've ever made. It's going to be a 2/1. All right. This change was surprising to me, and I think that I already had mixed feelings on this card, and I largely feel that like Jeff or Scorpion or Armor will pick up the slack if the performance on Lizard is not great. Sandman. Now, I bet you there's a lot of people pretty excited about this nerf. Of course, Sandman players are not going to be thrilled, and I'm surprised they went from 5/5 to 5/3. I thought they would have gone to 5/4. It seems a little heavy-handed, but I don't play Sandman. I don't like the Electro Ramp decks that much myself. I kind of feel they are a little bit disruptive to the gameplay. I understand the purpose and the need for a deck like that, but I think that most of the community is not a fan of that style of deck and probably is thrilled with this change. Since Sandman's change from 4-1 to 5-5, we've seen him become a foundational piece of electro-based strategy that slows down an opponent, makes his effect feel asymmetrical by contesting multiple lanes with Dr. Doom or just some heavy hitters. That's certainly a deck we expected to see, but it's become more popular than we would like. It's true, it's a very popular deck. This tap on the man makes him less competitive source of power, giving added edge to players, ultimately committing cards early and making the in-game choices of each player more likely ultimately determine the outcome of the game. I didn't perceive this deck as overly problematic. You kind of know when you're playing against a Sandman deck, and I would just choose to dump my hand early before the Sandman would drop. Now, this is the one that I think most people are the most excited about, and this is going to be the most impactful card. The way that I see this is that normally Shang-Chi was a better choice than an Enchantress in most situations. So let's read this. And I also think this is going to make Cosmo an even more important of a card. Old 4-4. Now she's a 4-6. She's going to be thick. It's going to be pretty good. On reveal, remove all the abilities from all ongoing cards at this location. Interesting comments here. It's been particularly telling to us that a world where Armor, Patriot, Darkhawk, Devil Dino, Sandman, Blue Marvel, and even Null are major players that affect Enchantress, is a poor performer on both popularity and actual winning. There are mitigating factors, of course, energy curves, priority battles, and so forth. Ultimately, she's not functioning as a solid counter for ongoing cards, especially the symmetrical ones that Rogue can't interact with. Hopefully, this change lets her contest locations in addition to neutralizing major power problems like Darkhawk or reclaiming a big turn from early Sandman, reclaiming a big turn from 6 from an early Sandman. Okay, so let's talk about the decks that these changes are going to be impacted the most. And I think we're going to go off of the video from earlier this week. Top 10 decks. Sandman, Electro, Sandman. So I think people are still going to play this deck, and they're just going to live with Sandman being a 5-3. I see Lizard being subbed out, and for the people that have Jeff, they're probably going to put Jeff in this deck because Jeff actually synergizes well with not only Sandman, but also synergizes with Electro. So I just see this deck changing a little bit, and actually Jeff synergizes with Ebony Maw, right? In a weird way, you know, you're locked out, you can still play Jeff into your Ebony Maw lane. So I that's all I think it's going to happen, is that this deck will still exist, but largely people will remove Lizard and put in Jeff. All right, and if there's less play of this deck and lower win rate, I think that would be just fine in my opinion. Now, this was probably the most one of the more popular decks. Actually, I felt like this is the best deck in the game. And on my earlier in this week suggestion, I was suggesting that people should start considering playing Cosmo instead of cards like Agent Coulson, which I think that now this is going to be a no-brainer addition into the Devil Dino Darkhawk decks. And the idea is that you play Cosmo on turn 3, and then you're able to play your Darkhawk or Devil Dino hiding behind the Cosmo, and then on turn 6 or later in the match, you can drop your Mystique and copy them, and it'll be fine. So there were a ton of builds that did not run Cosmo, and so if you're playing Darkhawk, Devil Dino, I would highly suggest playing Cosmo if Enchantress becomes more and more of a thing. Now, this deck right here is a Darkhawk Death Wave or a Doom Wave deck, and it ran Lizard, and I think that this deck also would benefit from playing a card like Cosmo instead of Lizard. So I think that there's two ways that this could be changed. If Enchantress becomes more optimal than playing Shang-Chi, I could see that Shang-Chi being replaced with Enchantress, which has positive interaction with Lizard, or I could just see Lizard being removed and people playing cards like Cosmo or Jeff. Still going to be a good deck for sure. Patriot, wow. I feel like this deck is going to be impacted the most by Enchantress. Now, this is one of the best decks in the game right now. There were 4 decks that were played a lot last week, and that was Galactus, Sandman, Patriot, and the Devil Dino Dockhawk builds right here. So this one here had a very high cube rate and high win rate, and this is going to be negatively impacted for sure by Enchantress. I don't have any suggestions for this deck right here other than look out, Enchantress might be coming. And then we've got a deck that I do not think will be affected much by these changes. This deck I think is a little underrated. I think it's a good deck. There's a lot of different versions of this deck. The only card that's going to be impacted by Enchantress would be Morbius. So let's move on. This deck right here, I don't think is that good. Actually, I played it, and I played all the Thanos decks, trying to find out which was the best Thanos deck. And I came away with a feeling that maybe Thanos is not that strong, or that there is not an optimized build for Thanos. I am looking for a optimized Thanos build, and when I find one, I will make a video about it for sure. But largely, I found that Thanos decks right now are just missing something, and I didn't find this deck to be that consistent nor that good. Lockjaw Casino. I think this deck is going to continue to be good and thrive. Sarah Surfer might be one of the best decks in the game right now. This is a very good build, has a lot of control elements to it, a lot of ways of doing things to your opponent and controlling the board, and then pushing out power in the last turn. This is actually the deck that I probably want to play the most lately. And also, I mean, its natural counter to this deck was Electro Sandman, and that deck might be going away. So if I'm going to say what deck is going to probably thrive the most by these changes, it's going to be this deck right here. And then also, because in the video, when I made this video, I said that there's Sarah Surfer and there's Sarah Control. It's just that the best Sarah decks are the Sarah Surfer kinds, but the Sarah Control one, which did not make my list, will see an uprising with the changes to Enchantress. And then Galactus, I guess Galactus might, Enchantress might have some sort of play against Null. Keep in mind that for Enchantress to work on a turn 6 against Null, you don't want to have priority. And so I feel like Galactus decks will now be more focused on not getting priority. And like the ones that run Wolverine instead of Psylocke will probably pivot away from Wolverine and use cards like Psylocke, or probably, in my opinion, would probably be Cloak would be a better choice in that slot right there. Lastly, I just want to say this deck right here did not make my top 10 list last week, but I think it will next week. And this is the deck that I'm going to probably focus on the most because I'm excited about Enchantress. 2 extra power seems impactful and a surprise, right? So let me know what you think in the comment section about these changes. The only one that really kind of made me scratch my head a little bit is the lizard one, but the other 3 I think are fine. What do you think? Let me know what you think in the comment section. As always, thanks for watching. Keep on gaming. Bye for now.